Ready? No.
I go to
Well, welcome.
Yes, that's not cool. Have a conference section.
What happened? Did y'all get? And your parents?
Well, I actually live in my child. So I think they
Good morning. Yes.
We have houses. I think that's all. I think landed here. Aren't there about 3 fully? Yeah, but it was like 2 weeks.
Yeah, actually, I borrowed this from one. No, I'm back in I got a call with the accountant and then that they're gonna deliver it, so roughly now it's halfway. They showed up, I went for a walk, they said they were gonna deliver it, but I had no idea, so I go for a walk, I'm down to the block about a mile. And I get a call and forgot the front desk, and I told them, look, I have a food bag, they're gonna bring it. And it's got my initials, that's my name. And so the guy was like, hey Sean, I will let you know, the bag was delivered. They showed the baby blue and it's bag black. And it's like, I did black, I was like, are you sure? It's like, yes, it's like, are you sure it's baby blue? So, still there. So the guy was like, yes. So apparently, but you know, I'm saying about the guys from that, I was saying like, they were black, so anyway, yes, now I have time. So now we're
and I think discipline is awful. And I don't know if that helps, because they couldn't relate information quickly. Yeah, right, that's what it is. Oh my gosh. Are you here for the day now?
yeah.
I
was cooled down.
Oh, I was a cheerleader.
I failed cheerleading. I failed. Yeah, I had to play basketball sometimes. No idea.
Just stick with how you feel.
I also coached cheerleading on the lab, so that's why they're so fresh in my mind.
I don't think those things don't mean
You want to hear our testing cheer? S-U-C-C-E-S-S, S-U-C-C-E-S-S. It's good. At night, we know our school is dynamite.
Okay, you see why they
See, there's a softball cheer that S-U-C-C-E-S-S. Which is less expensive, so let's go.
also to play softball.
Our board.
I feel like that a little or a lot.
You sit quietly.
I feel 10 units of be softball.
Okay.
I'm just not getting into that. And I got one girl, I think she's got confused, so she just starts making them.
was like my sister really easy. I hate it. And her how do you feel about the paper?
Useless. All the time. And I'm like, oh, this is yelling at some things that I don't should answer, but I hear great. Yelling.
I'm on first base today.
Yeah, exactly. I'm over there.
Yeah.
Science is from this side now.
You're all right.
I probably did, but, I mean, it's like, and then don't do like messages that have drafts and things like that. Because I'm like, here. Oh, I mean, my typewriter.
Gotta shake it.
Yeah, there's a berry that gets in there. Berries, yeah. Here, I, hope you're not.
Something's not working. Oh, it's in the actual thing.
You get it, really just sucked into the nozzle.
That's how it goes.
Fill it back. I got this problem. Oh, yeah, go into the left side.
How many doctors?
Come back.
Wow, thank you.
It's like coarse material.
When you go. If I get on out. I think it's.
I know that's what the default.
So, and I was giving them at my mid-America, talking about scratch program, my head now, it's, I did it for 2 weeks. So we've been going back and forth on booking.
It's easier to put that on than
I was in high
Alright, so it's.
I put on one of
So it's in college.
I tried to bail it out.
Hey, morning.
Check it out.
Yeah, she's on.
Do a summer.
I think she got to leave it.
I learned so much, but it's like, you're not coming. How do you get to
Well, let's try other things. Well, not really. That's
She asked me about that this morning. I do actually. I said this. I'm gonna ask you one
Maybe that's in your side, either conference or.
That's the spot that would just I'm in university now. I leave my house as a yes. Yes. So I really have
Well, they shake it, yeah, sure.
whenever that opportunity. If it's in our
We'll start.
It's not gonna be long before. So active in our Have it go.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, watch my head. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Started this morning.
Oh, yes, that you.
So we have a big chunk.
You don't like to.
Yeah, so wherever you want, chairs.
Sure, but.
Everybody has strength, they have whatever they need to get started. Yeah, first one is ready for something else. Okay, so this morning, we'll do what we did similar to yesterday. We'll go through each presentation, 10 minutes to share your information. I'll set the timer. Again, most of the time maybe we'll turn it off before it goes. Then we'll do questions, and then we'll transition to the next person, depending on how much time's in between, to make it, time to run out or talk to them a little bit further. So, anybody have questions about anything else? Again, after we go through this, we'll have lunch, and then it'll be like yesterday, the flip-flop. So, Mary early will come in today to talk to you guys about the paperwork, and then the group that presented yesterday will go on their adventures today. Cameron, and then also over to the Weatherspoon Spoon, and the group presenting today will have their video afternoon. Again, that's downstairs. It's called the shared room. I'm sure that's a number, but it's down there. Okay, so Rick, as soon as you decide to start, as soon as you start, then I'll start. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Steele. I'm an assistant professor of physical education and health at Northern Virginia Community College, just outside of Washington, D.C. Today I'm here to present my proposed dissertation work, which is currently entitled Promoting Inclusion of Students with Physical Disabilities in Community College Physical Activity Courses, an assessment of faculty perspectives and prior training. The idea for this dissertation work came with some student complaints that we had about 5 years ago. Several students complained about a handful of adjunct faculty in our physical activity courses that they were told to either drop the class or take another course because of their physical disability. This is obviously contrary to legal requirements of the American with Disabilities Act, and part of my job as cluster chair at the time was to investigate. And these were founded complaints. We were able to solve the issues in a positive way, but it really made me think, are our faculty actually prepared to help these students? So when we go into the background, we have to start thinking about adults with physical disabilities and how physical activity plays a role in their lives. We know that physical activity has tremendous benefits for health, psychological health, excuse me, and disability management. We also know that these adults by far have the greatest prevalence of lifestyle-related diseases. We also know that they are the least physically active segment of the U.S. population. And this lack of activity really stems from the barriers, both environmental and personal, to physical activity that they face. But an often overlooked aspect of this is the social aspect. The social aspect is defined not only how the person with disability views themselves, but how other people view the disability. Negative views from other people can lead to negative stigmas. And this is really rooted in the old medical or biological model of physical activity. This is common in kinesiology, but also within society. This led to the belief that people couldn't do it. They were not capable of physical activity. And it led to exclusionary programs, such as adaptive physical education and adaptive sports programs. Yet, if we're able to apply a social cultural model, we can basically create social inclusion if we give them equitable opportunities and promote positive attitudes. And if we're able to do that, research shows several things within physical activity and within society that are benefits of being able to accomplish this. With students with physical disabilities, this is a very large population and underserved population. And the college years are an important time for them to learn the importance of lifelong well-being. Unfortunately, the research is very limited about the facilitators too and the barriers of physical activity for these students. The limited research available points to recreation programs and social inclusion being a key goal and facilitator to their participation. Unfortunately, there may be a lack of appropriate programs for these students, and that really gives kinesiology a key opportunity to serve these students. But what we have to do is go beyond simple ADA accommodations, and we have to promote disability inclusion. And we do that with equitable opportunities, appropriate environments, the right equipment, and most importantly, the right instruction. Now, there's very little data in terms of kinesiology faculty in terms of their perspectives, but there are several key factors for general college faculty that have been seen. Positive attitudes are very important, but the most important is probably knowledge of the Americans with Disabilities Act and what accommodations are. And for community college faculty, time is also a big constraint because they have jobs, they have lives, and they work at the college part-time. One of the major recurring themes in literature is that all faculty, even those with positive perspectives and attitudes, need more disability training to better serve students. With that, my purpose is to assess the current state of readiness of the faculty at my college to teach and work with students with physical disabilities, to make recommendations for policy and training at my college. To accomplish this, I have the following specific aim: is to identify the attitudes, knowledge, experiences, and previous training of our faculty. And I want to do this with the following proposed study. Now, we currently have 28 full and part-time faculty at our college. They teach a variety of physical activity courses like golf, swimming, martial arts, yoga, Pilates, and they also have varying health-related degrees and various professional backgrounds. Some are teachers, some are wellness professionals, some are personal trainers. It runs the gamut. And I want to assess the variability in these people, better serve these students. My research design is a sequential explanatory mixed methods. I am going to start with an anonymous online survey delivered through Qualtrics. I'll be doing this in September and October. I will do a follow-up interview either in person or virtual in November and December for those that choose to participate in the interview. Those will of course be digitally recorded and online transcribed. My overall timeline is May of this year through May of next year. The survey I'm using is actually in existence. I did not have to create it. It's called the Faculty Perspectives About Teaching and Working with Students with Physical Disabilities. It was created by Becker and Palladino in 2016. They developed this to assess university faculty and their experiences and perceptions, or perspectives, their attitudes, their prior training, and their teaching approach. There are 11 total questions on this survey. 8 are demographic and designed to get simple yes or no answers to their experiences. There are also 2 Likert items, one to assess faculty assumptions, attitudes, and knowledge of the ADA, and the other is set up to examine teaching efficacy and performance and mastery approach to teaching. The authors concluded that this was a valid survey, and it's a very brief survey to use, and most importantly, it's assesses the potential need for faculty training. The authors also suggested that it be adjusted, that it be modified to use with other faculty. And for my work, I'm adjusting it very minimally, just 3 questions to focus on community college kinesiology faculty. The survey had 1 open-ended question, which is kind of limited. To meet my aim, I've also included 3 that focus on faculty perspectives about benefits of physical activity for the students, their prior training, and their attitudes and thoughts on not only content, but delivery method for any future training, potentially online. I did pilot this, which ended in March of this year at a small community college in Virginia. There were 12 invitees. I received 5 responses, but only 4 were complete responses with the open-ended questions answered. These were experienced faculty. They all had some form of training or experience with physical disabilities, but every single one of them said they would be open to more training. They wanted to know more about what they can and can't say to these students. They want to know more about teaching modalities and adaptive exercise and fitness equipment. And with my aim and with the data that I got from my pilot, I've developed these initial interview questions. I do plan to modify them if necessary based on the open-ended responses I do receive. My analysis is relatively simple. It's mostly descriptive statistics for demographics and experience, the teaching subscales, and also the faculty awareness of the ADA and their attitudes. I will be doing one-way ANOVA to compare the faculty assumptions, attitudes, and ADA knowledge to these variables of teaching experience, course taught, and either a high or low teaching efficacy. And this is simply to compare it to the data from the original study because we don't have it. And their study noted that teachers with low teaching efficacy really gave poor answers. They were not prepared to serve these students. And and provide appropriate accommodations. For the qualitative member checking, I'll send summaries and full transcriptions for them to review. And thematic analysis will be done through the Atlas software program. And my expected outcome is pretty simple. I want to give my college a list of recommendations for policy and training. We currently offer training, but it's very basic on the simple ADA requirements for accommodation. We can do more than that if we are able to adjust our courses. So I'm going to go through different texts, different resources that can be used to help faculty better serve students in our courses. Also want to make recommendations for policy on hiring new faculty and also potentially adjusting our faculty evaluation system for full and part-time faculty. Almost got it done. Thank you for your time. I thank my committee for their help. Dr. Reisleck, you've been great the last semester. I really appreciate that. I'll take any questions anyone has. Yes, ma'am.
So, your title or purpose is focused on physical disabilities.
Yes.
But you're using a survey from a broader study that's not limited to physical disabilities.
Yes.
Are there any modifications that you can make to make that clear?
In terms of the title of when I send out the survey?
Well, the items on the survey are not specific to physical disabilities.
The 11 questions, some of them were adjusted to really focus on our faculty, community college kinesiology faculty in our setting. So one of the questions was, or the second question of the original survey was, what college within the university you work for? So College of Business, Education. I took that out and I put it in the different courses. One asked if the faculty member has ever provided accommodations. I adjusted it to include make adjustments to physical activity for participation and inclusion. Where I'm focusing the physical disabilities is on the open-ended question and interviews. Back in comps, I think it was Dr. Carper told me, don't mess with it, or mess with it as little as possible, and then add what you need to at the end. So that's the approach I'm taking. Yes, sir. I'm focused on physical disabilities. The survey asks about many types of disabilities. So I'm trying to get a clear picture of the overall disability picture at our school, but then get more descriptive, focused data on the physical disability aspect in terms of mobility limitations.
So you're not including someone who may have heart disease?
No.
Or asthma, or anything like that?
No.
So you're really telling me this is a disability that's identified or classified?
That's actually one of the major issues faced with my study and really the future work of the study and creating any training program is students don't have to disclose the disability to the teacher. They have to take their information, they have to go to their school's disability services office and say, hey, I'm in a wheelchair, I need X, Y, Z accommodations, and the college helps them figure out what they're entitled to. Well, then they simply give the faculty member a memorandum of accommodation and say, here. And it's always testing or lecture notes online, depending on what their disability is. And a lot of that really is geared to learning disabilities, in my personal opinion. But we're not allowed to ask. Hey, I see you're in a wheelchair. What's the problem? I can't ask that. I can encourage them to tell me, but I can't directly ask. And that's one of the major hurdles to implementing this from an administrative standpoint, but also from a faculty standpoint, that you can't ask, but you can encourage. Yes?
I was wondering, since you have first-hand experience with this, if you have any hypotheses about what the policy changes should be, especially what they might be beyond what the ADA requires?
Well, first and foremost, I want to have it included in the evaluation of our faculty. For full-time faculty, we have this big, huge thing we have to go through every time our contract is up as our evaluation. It's on our service, our our research pursuits, our how we're serving students, how we're advising, and our performance in the classroom. Nowhere does it say providing accommodations to students with any types of disabilities. I would like to see it include that for all disabilities, not just physical. But it's what I've seen is a lot easier to get somebody with a learning disability to go to the weight room than somebody that's in a wheelchair. And the data really does support that they are the least active, and that's really what I want to focus on. For adjunct faculty, the evaluation is amazingly simple. I used to do all of them for our adjuncts. It's basically a pass-fail. Meets expectations, doesn't. And then it's up to me to look at their course evaluations and my interactions with them and provide up to 1 paragraph summary, and that's it. Right. That's not extensive enough, but that's what's currently required at our college, and I think that should change.
Follow up with that, just sort of riff on what you just described. I sort of imagine what you described as sort of a form of overseeing, the performance of instructors, knowing that they're going to be evaluated on this in a way, so that I can put police them to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing for their students. And in many ways, that's what the ADA does as well. And I wonder if that's enough, right?
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
In the context of our physical activity courses that we have in my college, they have in UNCG, they have them across the country. Sometimes they're required, sometimes they're not, but a lot of times they're electives. It's not enough. I've been told by our disability services that if I have a student like that, I should give them a separate written assignment instead of taking them to do physical activity.
Yeah.
And one of the things with that, if you really read the American with Disability Act, that's contrary to what it says. You don't have to materially change your course. And if I'm going to the weight room and I'm giving them a written assignment, that's materially changing my course. I don't have to do that. But we have so many capabilities in terms of what we know or potentially could know to help these people engage in physical activity for their health benefit, but also for their social benefit. Yes, ma'am.
I think back after that, knowledge about ADA guidelines is one piece, but then knowledge about how to actually adapt to activity or PD is a different kind of knowledge that is relevant to this. Do you have a way of assessing both?
Yes, I'm including that. I hope it's supposed to be there. So basically, I'm kind of including that into my interview questions, where I'm looking at how faculty perceive the barriers and what instructors in the college can do to help them overcome these barriers, and also how they plan their courses and what resources they use. Yes, ma'am.
You and I have worked together quite a bit, so like a huge advocate for you and for this topic. I would just say again, I think you could take this globally, because I've been in this position so many times of wanting to do the right thing for students and just not knowing what to do, for all the reasons that you keep mentioning. That educational piece, I think we as professionals are hungry for that, to do the right thing.
And as something I've been thinking about recently, the nature of my college is changing dramatically. We've gone through academic reorganization. We've had all physical education requirements stripped from most academic programs. So we're seeing a dramatic reduction in not only the number of classes, but the number of faculty that we have. So honestly, I don't know currently if I'm going to have 28 faculty to do this all next year. So I'm strongly considering branching this out to other schools within the Virginia Community College system, just to get more responses. That makes more work for me, more logistical effort in terms of interviews. The survey aspect would be easy, but it's more IRB, it's more location approval. But if that's what I need to do, then that's what I'm going to have to do. That's something I'll discuss with my committee. Yes, ma'am.
What if you have 28 people involved and say, sure, I'll do
That's fine. I'll do every single interview that people want to do until if they start saying the same stuff over and over again. The redundancy in the responses, obviously, it's what we learn about. I actually fully expect them all to say they have positive attitudes and so forth. That doesn't mean they have the proper knowledge and training to be able to help these students.
So do you know if your school is willing to make like a financial investment in this? Because, you know, like you keep an example of the weight room. You know, there are wheelchair friendly equipment that's potentially expensive. Do you think that we need to go that far, or do you think we can adapt?
I mean, ultimately, personally, yes, but my particular campus, like my school has 6 distinct campuses, medical campuses and 5 other locations. I work at the Alexander campus, and we just got a brand new building. It's been open for a year and a half. It's absolutely amazing, and I had a hand in not only designing our research physical activity classroom, but our fitness center, our basketball studio, and I tidbits in the whole building, and they were very big on ADA compliance. So ramps, wheelchairs, and when the person that runs our fitness center and I, the academic side, sat down to pick equipment, we really focused on, okay, we need to make sure that a wide variety of people can use this. From, expert, fitness people to elderly people to people in wheelchairs. So we got a lot of cable systems, we got a lot of equipment. The one that I do want us to get is a hand ergometer. That's not too expensive.
Is the ADA the only relevant legal construct here, or are there other laws that you should be considering?
My understanding, ADA is the one that directly applies to college and university settings. The IDEA, I believe, applies to K through 12 education. So section 504. My understanding. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
So I shared that. I've already emailed you an article with some ideas in it, but
Thank you.
so yeah,
I'll check that later. Maybe next week.
See, as far as policies that you want to see implemented in your college, you talked about the assessment of instructor or professor performance. And then you talk about, obviously changing attitudes, which is not necessarily a policy, but it is a goal. Are there any other policies that you would like to see implemented, like some required training or so many CEUs per year that, and that, what are your thoughts about other policies?
Actually, I would, because when a new faculty member, either full-time or part-time are hired, they go through an online module. And then they have to do it every 3 years. And this online module literally takes 10 minutes, and it's a refresher on what the required ADA accommodations are. And not even all of them, just examples of it. It tells you to go to disability services if you have questions. But they have no idea how to modify physical activity. So I definitely would like to see some policies in place that there is a separate training component. That we do have mentors for them. When I was an adjunct, I mentored, when I was assistant dean, department head, I mentored each faculty member, and I made sure they knew how to do it. But I didn't have that oversight at every single campus. And those complaints I mentioned at the beginning, those happen at other campuses. So I would like to see a mentor in place for at least a year. I would like to see required training that goes beyond the ADA. My school even used to have more expanded training. They had different, hour to 2 hour modules of how to advise students with various disabilities. There are actually 2 parts of that because they got very, very technical. I went through them, they were great, but again, not related to physical activity, but overall benefits to students. So I would like to see that component in place and make it required. Sir?
The working with students, I assume you're working with students. The working with students part, the instruments that you're using tap into exactly what they're doing with students?
give you a moment, think the best way to answer
I'm
that.
looking at working with students, last part of your aim, like, where are you getting that information?
I actually got that directly, if I may switch.
In other words, does it come off of one of your instruments?
Yes,
You can get that information?
yes.
Okay. Okay, I just wondered if that was.
Thank you for spinning the question to make it easy to answer. Pam, you have a question?
Well, it sounds like another piece of the problem at your school, and not that they're the only ones that I've understood too, is disability services. So, just that they're not prepared, so they say, oh, well, we don't know how to help you, so just give them a test, or give them an assignment, so that's.
I was unfortunately didn't get to it, but one of my long-term goals was to try to foster better leadership and kind of bridge some of these gaps. There may be no perfect solution to it, but there may be ways that we can circumvent or really help the situation. Because they have been adverse I once suggested that I would develop an adaptive class that students could have the option to take if they wanted to. They got mad at me because I suggested that. Where I know it's been done in other schools. Specific classes for women or different groups. They got mad. I think it's how they interpret it. And I like to bridge that gap and get more dialogue going with them and hopefully get their help in developing more training. That will be a key long-term program. I want to give my report to my dean, my provost, or all the provosts and the deans at our school to let them see what the situation is.
Time for one last question.
So based on the fact that there's no real research related to this topic, I'm guessing that, to say that there's content experts out there, you could almost wonder if they exist, but I guess I'm wondering, I know there would be textbook authors and other people that are certainly more knowledgeable.
Well, there are certainly experts, but most of the research done within kinesiology is K-12 education. And I do plan on using pieces of that in terms of my recommendations, but it doesn't always translate. The faculty that we have don't always come from physical education teaching programs. I have some, and we have some, but they don't actually come from colleges of education that might have, either specific courses or a program that's infused with, ways to modify courses in terms of physical activity or other ways. So they're out there. I want to use pieces of that, but research is pretty limited when it comes to the higher education setting, both in the campus rec programs, and honestly, to date, I've found nothing specific to classes. That's a gap I have to provide at least a little information toward. Thank you.
This is where we have this
Hey, I'm Sean. Hi. What's your name? Eddie. I just want to come up here and check out, based on what you see in the camera, where I could stand and move. Do you know roughly where to go?
Anyway, just the wrong piece there, but I can adjust the camera.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Eddie.
If you want a picture on, in Korean, we don't have a picture.
Okay, all right, I'll ask you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Are you enjoying this?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
There are some students come in and go out. Yesterday there was 32 or 33 viewers on YouTube.
All right, very cool. Is it, and it's showing live?
Yeah,
That's all.
YouTube live.
Uh-huh.
It's YouTube live.
Okay.
So it's online. It's completely live.
Very cool. Well, we appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
It's awesome to have you guys.
It's my work.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, you are next.
No, I'm the fourth person. But I just figured I'd check.
Yeah, it's okay. Just you can go anywhere and I can follow you.
Okay.
Just the camera, like, fade around.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Good luck in the presentation.
Thank you.
I remember Sarah.
When you close it, M3 processing. But the only one problem is I cannot stop it. If I stop it, I need to create another link. So you have to send an email to me. I've always keep it open. So that is, it just has a pause function. You just need to skip every skip time. You have to skip it.
There's a great we were doing You can either go on or whatever it is like that. But if you were every
Well, I remember.
Somebody's watching me now.
I went to the Birmingham Park yesterday.
To the what?
Birmingham Park. Birmingham. It's a beautiful park.
Is it?
Yeah, there is a trail, but just jogging there.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's around the lake.
I was like, you go laundry, you buy them for $2. And then you buy them. Yeah, I've done that. Well, I'm all the time. Okay, I gotta go get my phone.
Cool.
haven't done that. I have done that more than once. That is hilarious. You got the Linda. You are awesome. You are awesome. AWE, Linda is awesome. Totally. AWE. That's not coping, right?
But it's your honor. I think it's.
I've got this, say, a lot more information
The trainer's like, you didn't trust it. I'm like, very little evidence of our friends. Yeah.
Sounds like that. It's like catching.
I need to be able to go and walk my dogs. I'm not sitting in a chair all day. I'm working, like, I'm standing. Okay, so Linda's patiently waiting for us all to be ready for her. But, and I'm gonna do this time. This is the one that had that longer loss.
Linda, I need like 10 more minutes. Is that cool?
So whenever Linda's ready.
So I'm Linda Butler-Storsved, and my dissertation is approaching adolescent movement quality in physical education. And in my dissertation, I'm seeking to answer how well adolescents move and if a standardized warm-up will improve their movement more than regular physical education. And to give you an idea of why I have focused on movement quality and specifically in physical education, for a moment, I would like for you to imagine you're a 9th grade physical education teacher, okay? And your goal, I know there's a lot of pluses, your goal as a 9th grade physical education teacher is to develop physically literate individuals, those that have the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to enjoy a lifetime of physical activity. And on this particular day, you are having them do some squats. And when they're squatting, you notice maybe some students aren't getting down low enough, or some are excessively leaning forward. And so what do you do as a physical educator? Right? You go back on your own training in your teacher education programs, where you learn how to perform the skills and you learn how to teach those skills to others. And so you get into your bag of tricks and maybe you pull out some skill cues and, you give them some reminders of, heels flat, spread your shoulders, things like that. But you still have some students that are not performing the SWOT properly. And it's not because they're not listening, and it's not because they're not trying, because they are comprehending and they're trying, but their body will not physically allow them to do the SWOT properly. And when we have those physical limitations, we call that dysfunctional movement. And what your teacher education program did not prepare you for is when it gets to that point, what to do when there's those physical limitations. And the problem with those is that they are a contributing factor to musculoskeletal pain and injury, which that's going to impede their ability to enjoy that lifetime of physical activity. So according to the kinetic chain theory, our body is all connected. Different bones, joints throughout the body, everything's connected. And when we apply force on one area of the body, it can transmit that force to another area of the body. And when we get restrictions in our mobility, being able to produce movement, our stability, maintaining our steadiness through movement, that dysfunction can end up causing pain and inflammation and injury up and down the kinetic chain. For instance, if you have limited ankle dorsiflexion, that can affect your movement at your knee, which can lead to potential knee injuries. Musculoskeletal issues are already high within, I would consider, within adolescence, and then even more so as we go into adulthood. But 47% reported in the past 12 months that they suffered some type of physical activity related injury, and the lifetime prevalence for adolescents for low back pain is at 40%, and this pain has negative consequences. It is negatively affecting school attendance, it's negatively affecting their physical activity level, and then also their health related quality of life. And then on top of that, adolescents that experience pain are more likely to become one of the 160 million adult Americans that suffer with pain each year that cost our society billions of dollars. So movement screens have been developed to assess a person's movement quality and to identify dysfunction prior to becoming causing a significant issue. The functional movement screen, or FMS, is one of these screens, which I will be using this for my study. There are 7 different movement patterns that you put the individual through. They're scored 0 to 3. Out of 3, they're able to do the movement without any compensations, going all the way down to a 0, which would be that they have pain during the movement. Typically 2, then those are added together for a total composite score out of 21. And also note, some of the tests you look at both sides of the body. So like the inline lunge, you're going to assess them on the right and the left side of the body so that asymmetries can be identified. So the differences of one side of the body to the next. For the adolescent population, to date, the mean scores are often near 14 or less than 14, which is a suggested threshold of potential injury. And also there's a high rate of asymmetries in the adolescent population. Much of the research has been done with the adult population and athletic populations. Interventions in active adult populations has been positive in improving the FMS total scores and also decreasing asymmetries. There's very limited research with the general adolescent population though, and even most of the research for the adolescent population has just been with athletes, and I'm looking at all adolescents. But up for, after some serious digging, some literature that I did find, there's 2 outside of physical education and 2 inside of physical education. 2 outside of physical education had mixed results. One did see a 17% increase in boys' FMS scores, but they did not have a control group. And then the other one did not have significant results. They had what they called trivial possible improvements, but they had a very small sample size. And then 2 in physical education, they had positive significant results, with a warm-up. And with these, one of them does not include any movement quality measures. And the other one does include movement quality measures, but not as much as I will be including in mine to provide more information. And then also that one is only done with 7th and 8th graders, and I am specifically looking at 9th graders. And also both of those interventions use some type of equipment, so something that would have to be purchased. The warm-up that I have does not use any equipment, which I feel is important because I know several physical education programs that barely get any money, if any at all, for the year for supplies. So my purpose is to assess the movement quality of a group of 9th grade physical education students and then the effectiveness of the standardized warm-up. And aim 1 is really looking at that scope of dysfunction and getting a better understanding of the extent and types of dysfunction in this group. And then aim 2, is the focus on that warm-up and its effectiveness. And there really needs to be more research to demonstrate effectiveness with varied type of programming and also the practicality of putting it within physical education. So my plan is, in the school, out of 69th graders, approximately 30 will be in Teacher A, which is the lead teacher of the school. She will have the functional movement warm-up group, and Teacher B will have the just regular physical education group, and they'll just have physical education as normal. In 1 week there in July at the start of school, I'll collect the background information. I will also test with the FMS, and I will be utilizing video recorders. And so I'm going to have one in front and a side, which is quite common in the other research studies, and then score it later by video. And then also I will be taking notes about the types of dysfunction that are seen while they're performing the test. And then I will also be interviewing the teacher to get her perceptions of the movement quality of her students. And I will be training her to facilitate the functional movement warm-up. So then over the 8 weeks, we'll do the warm-up 3 times a week for 8 to 10 minutes. And at that time too, I will be checking in with the teacher to gather feedback. And then with the post-datum, doing the FMS again, and then also a teacher interview for perceptions. And in this one, I'll still ask about movement quality, but then also the values and the challenges of the warm-up itself. So the intervention, I developed the warm-up last fall, and I collectively put together a lot of sources to create the warm-up. One was I interviewed 7 different professionals in the fields of strength and conditioning and physical therapy that have experience with corrective exercising. I took the themes from those, put that along with corrective exercise coursework, research of interventions that have shown positive results, and then also research that shows that for exercises that stimulate and activate the musculature that I'm looking to target, and then also improve range of motion. The first 7 exercises are actually from the PEP program, the Prevent Injury and Enhance Performance program, which is a well-known ACL prevention program. It's been shown in research to decrease the risk of ACL injuries. It's 15 to 20 minutes in total, so I'm not using the entire thing. But I chose these because of their emphasis on form for knee stabilization, and then also it's going to help to actively prepare the students for physical activity. And then the rest of the exercise are really a lot of focus on the leg, the trunk, and the shoulder stability and mobility. And specific things that I tried to target with these exercises, some of them is ankle dorsiflexion, hip mobility, glute activation, thoracic spine mobility, shoulder stability, along with the scapula, and core stability. I didn't say that one already. And then in my analysis, I will be using some descriptive statistics to report out the FMS total composite scores, but then also every individual test score. And then along with the asymmetries, and then a test like a repeated ANOVA to look at the comparison of the 2 groups. and then qualitatively themes from the dysfunction that's seen, and then also the teacher perceptions. And so my expected outcomes is to have that greater understanding of the extent and types of dysfunction, a warm-up that improves the movement quality of ninth graders, that does not utilize equipment, and then really have some good information about the practicality of that for physical education. And in the future, really using this to help develop further interventions and methods and materials to be utilized by physical educators as well as myself in my own practice. All right, thank you. How long is this class? They have 50-minute class.
Do you know what they do for a warm-up normally?
It's pretty standard what you imagine. Some days are just a dynamic warm-up. Others are, they specifically try to work on improving their scoring, their testing. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Their fitness gram testing. So they go through where they do some push-ups and some sit-ups, and they do some running to work on that. Yes.
When you think about change other than functional movement,
Yes.
are you controlling for anything so to get to the result, nothing contaminates the wrong way?
Yeah.
Like for instance, terrible stress, post-traumatic stress attack, something
Right. Which it's multifactorial. There's a lot of things that go into it. It'd be impossible to control for everything, but some of the things that I will be collecting that is parallel to other research that's been done similar to this is their previous injury history, and then also their participation in an organized sport.
No psychosocial stuff?
No.
So ninth grade PE, that's a interesting context. I've had a chance to work in high school PE the past year. So I think you probably know some high school physical education programs. I think the culture of the program is not conducive to innovative practice, such as what you proposed here. So can you talk about the context you're working in and how you can kind of assure us that it's going to be conducive to doing this work?
Okay, great. I honestly could not think of a better place to have and do this research study. This particular program, it's a state recognized program for their innovation with technology. They have a climbing wall. They have all kinds of good facilities. And the teacher herself, is very dedicated and has done a lot of presentations and brought things back to the classroom. And it's interesting you say that because one of the things in physical education, especially ninth grade, you have to worry about, are your students going to dress out? And I've worked with this teacher in the past with some of our PE Pro majors. And so we asked, how do you deal with students that don't dress out? And she said, we don't have that problem here. So students are always participating. And also the warm-up isn't so beyond what you would typically do in a physical education classroom. It's just being more intentional and putting things, some things together that it's not really asking them to go way beyond what might be expected, I think, to do. Yes.
So, because you're using the FMS as kind of one of the main outcomes, I'm going to dive a little deeper into that. So, you presented a score of 14 as kind of the standard, so up to 21 you're fine, 14 below at risk. So, do you know, from your lit search on that, do you know how that 14 threshold initially got set up? It was data driven, but any ideas of how they originally came up with that, and if that's an appropriate threshold you should be applying to this population?
So I will say that threshold is questionable. There has been a ton of research that has looked at that. Some have supported that threshold. Some have found a higher threshold. There's been others that it was at 16. And then there's some that have not found any correlation with the threshold with the prediction of future injury. And looking then especially looking at the individual studies and then looking at some of the reviews. One of the things to note is the methods have been so different from one research study to the next that the authors even said it's really difficult to really determine if it does or not, even trying to put together the enormous amount of research that has been done on it. But I'm not really trying to put them into a category of a higher risk or not. I'm really looking at, can we improve their movement quality? And that's what I'm looking for, that measurement.
And I think that's important, and it's good too, and you were transparent in the document about that. But what would it mean if your reconstructive to an 18? Does that mean the change for ninth graders? We don't know, but I think it's just important to be transparent about that.
Right.
Where I think there's also probably some value in adding a little more depth is what has been done in this space outside of the adults. So a figure or a table or something, these are the FMS scores that have been done in these populations. And then these are the FMS scores. There's relatively little research in adolescents, like you mentioned. But what are the scores? What's the variation on the scores? So it might not be the mean, but maybe they're all over the place because they're at different developmental trajectories. And so that way you know that there's going to be a bigger range. And for your kids that are at the upper end or your kids that are at the lower end, are they more movable in one direction or another? Because you're kind of at this interesting ninth grade space. So I think those are all just important things to add context as your project develops, is what this metric means. This is the main metric for your dissertation, but what does it mean in this population if they move 1 point, 2 points, 3 points? You may not know, but you may get some added context based on what your teachers report to you. And some of the, I guess, qualitative stuff. So not only are they scoring better on the test on the back end, but through the conversation with the physical education teacher, they're also moving better in some of the other stuff that they're doing in class. So that adds extra value to it.
Thank you. Yes.
Have you already thought about making sure that you know if any of those children are receiving treatment for any chronic pain conditions while they're doing the study?
So one of my exclusion criteria is, one, if they cannot participate in physical education from the start due to some type of injury or illness. And then also if they have any pain during any one of the movements, including clearing tests, that there's one for shoulder impingement and also for back flexion and extension. If they have pain, then they would not be included.
The reason why I bring up the date is you see the therapist and from the physician using medication that compound some of the results. I would certainly ask a question to make sure this is not on medication receiving active treatment from someone.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I just came back from New Zealand, Australia, with a bunch of people in Australia from Deakin University and University of Newcastle who are doing a lot of work in fundamental movement skills. They have for about 20 years. So I just checked your reference list and none of them are in there. So what I suggest is while I look at some of them, there's also a woman by the name of Jackie Goodway from Ohio State who works in fundamental movement and works at elementary level. But I think some of her work might apply to you. And then there's a guy called Dave Stone, who's at the University of South Carolina, who also works in fundamental movement skills. Have you heard of any of those?
Well, is it fundamental movement or is it functional movement? And that's where it becomes very confusing when we talk about physical education and even use the acronym FMS for the screen. Because the fundamental movement would be being, jogging, skipping, striking, all of those. And then functional movement is that underlying movement that allows someone to go through a basic movement pattern, with the proper mechanics.
Right.
And so I'm not sure.
I think some of those folks work in both of those areas. I'll put them on your documents.
Okay.
Might worth you looking at what they're doing.
All right.
Support your work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
You have a great study. We've been connected for a while, but I'm guessing that like your relationship with the teacher is strong and her relationship with students is strong, so that will increase your odds of success. And just thinking, and definitely not to add anything to your study, but maybe in the future to try to capture how the students feel about improving their functional movement, if that would help them like get that positive cycle going, like to tap into that. I don't even know if I'm totally making sense,
No,
but I'm just thinking like that's a key component.
You can check my folder, there's questions there, actually.
Yeah.
So, no, it has,
Just kind of running that tape in my head of, you know, all the components of limited movement and that path, and then, you know, once the doors open a little bit, feeling better, and especially in ninth grade, like Michael said, like that's a bit of a rough patch.
Yeah, so that definitely is something that I have considered, and I know in the future I will definitely include the student perceptions in it, because I hope to expand to where then they would actually learn about functional movement. And so there would be materials and information to teach the physical educators first about it, but then how to teach that to students. And then looking at how that that process, and how that improves their knowledge and their movement and how they feel about it and all of that. But that was something I was going to talk more with my committee about too, you know, if there's enough value to add it on already to the multiple things that I'm looking at.
Because I don't think the students would really appreciate like a vested interest in their movements. We can all tap into the experience that have been less than desirable of just a pacer warm up the whole year. Is what 2 of my kids have had in high school. That's it for the warm up. Pacer. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
You said that you are personally doing all the training other than some.
So for this study, I'm going to be training the teacher to do the warm up.
Just one teacher? Or
Yes, just one teacher,
one teacher?
just one group.
So when you're identifying, the only way that you're identifying students who have like less than desirable movement is by doing the FMS, correct? And it's going on the videotape. Is once you see that a student is, I guess what would say, less than 14, is that the score? Are you asking them, like, are you finding out why they are? Like, did something happen? Did you have an injury? Like, and it's back to that control question.
I will be able to, and really I really want to include the individual test scores and not just look at it as an overall total score. It's going to be one of the things, and so really with each individual score, if you even get a 2, which is with some compensations, then it's still a satisfactory score. It's when you go down to a 1 where there's really dysfunction, where they cannot even complete the movement pattern. And so then I would look, has this person had a previous injury that potentially, because we do know that could potentially affect their movement.
Remind me again how big the classes are. Students.
So there's approximately about 30 with each teacher at a time. There's actually, so in this school, there's 90 physical education or 9th graders around. They all go to physical education at the same time. And then they randomly divide them 30 with each teacher. And I was only going to utilize 2 of those groups for a few different reasons. Yes.
So you mentioned you were going to ask about previous history of injury and their participation in
Organized sports.
Yeah. So I was just curious as to whether you were going to inquire about kind of regular physical activity that's not organized sport. How often, if at all, just thinking that could influence some of their scores.
Yes, I have considered it, still considering it, in potentially putting that.
One more.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with this, how quickly someone catches on part of it. Like sometimes people just take a really long time to maybe learn them straight languages. Is that part of?
Do you mean for the test itself?
Yeah.
So they get 3 trials of each movement, and then you score the best one. And then there's very specific like protocol and even a script that you use so that it's the same from one student to the next. I also plan to have pictures so that they can see the movement while it's being described to them about what they're going to have to do. But they get those 3 trials for each one, and then you take their best one.
So you said you were training teachers to deliver the training program on testing, but you can do that yourself.
Yes.
How many students is that?
So it'll be 60 students total with both groups. So 30 in one group, 30 in the other group. That's one of the reasons for the video scoring too, but also video scoring has even stronger reliability than real time.
How long do you think it will take to test one person?
Well, if you were going to do the entire screen all together at one time, it's estimated about 10 minutes. So it's about 10 minutes to put someone through every single one of them, but I'm not doing all 7 movements in one day. They're actually going to have other testing that they're doing that day because they do a lot of fitness testing at the beginning of the school year, and they move around in groups. So I'm going to be one of those stations to where I'm going to have maybe 4 students at a time, and they're going to complete 3 tests on one day and then 4 on the other day.
You're going to do fitness testing before they get to you?
It is potential that we haven't worked out the exact schedule, but it is my plan that they wouldn't be doing a pacer run before they get to me. They wouldn't do anything that's really getting them too warmed up. The screen, it's actually suggesting you're not warmed up before you do the screen, but that you just how you would normally move through your day. Thank you.
got summer, she alive.
Yeah, good.
Melinda texted me sometime this week, not next week, ended up talking to you, but Aiden had gone to one of the tryouts last night
Oh, yeah. How
over
about
here
that?
in Greensboro. And so we were talking with the goalie coach. So I was saying that it's the Greensboro one, not the one that's over by us. So I was talking to the guy about you. So I have his contact information if you're interested in getting involved with the club. But it's the same club like where Sari was, you know, like over at.
Oh, Kusa?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'll just talk to you more.
Yeah, so they have how many players, goalkeepers they have?
So some of that I don't know.
So they have only one coach?
So they have one lead guy, and then they have other people that would be under him. So I'll just talk to you more.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna move it. No problem. I can follow you, track you. No worries.
I'm Troy Koppas. I'm currently an athletic training and health sciences faculty at the University of Evansville, but my thought came from my previous job as a assistant athletic trainer both at the University of Evansville and even before that at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. And my dissertation subject is the value of subjective measures in quantification of training load and determining injury incidents in male intercollegiate soccer population. So it stemmed from my job as a clinical athletic trainer, just trying to figure out how to be more efficient with my time. We have a lot of athletes, not that many athletic trainers, and that's a very common theme among athletic training, and especially when you get out of the professional and the Big Ten, ACC, SEC sort of settings, when you get to the D2, D3, you have to be efficient with your time to be impactful. And soccer is one of the most endurance collegiate sports there is, behind football, men's ice hockey, and men's basketball. Men's and women's soccer are right there. So it's something that needs to be done to prevent some of these injuries. And injuries can be preventable, they found in soccer, when you have the tendinitis, the tendinoses, even some of the strains that come from a non-contact mechanism. And so if they're preventable, there's suspicions that improper training protocols are why these happen. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes in a little bit more detail. So if the training is the problem, how do we fix that? How do we know how to train somebody? And that's where quantification of training load comes into play. There are many, many methods. And you have blood lactate levels, you have heart rate monitoring, you have GPS and accelerometer measures, metabolic carts, all sorts of things that you can use to quantify training load. But in a soccer setting, especially in a soccer setting that doesn't have much money, how many of those are practical? Not many, if any of those. The one that I'm going to be focusing on with my dissertation is subjective measures, and that's rating of perceived exertion. Particularly putting that rating of perceived exertion with the minutes of activity, and that those activities are going to be practices, strength training sessions, weight training sessions, matches, or individual or small group practices. So using SRPE has been found to be moderate to high validity in the population studied. Most of these populations are the higher levels of athletics, professionals, people that can afford a lot of fancy equipment. And it's low cost. It costs as much as it takes to either fill out a piece of paper, and most of the studies nowadays have iPads that they punch in buttons after practice. And to give kind of a comparison, I have my population does have access to distance covered using the Polar Team Pro devices. And in that same study, or the same consensus statement, is said to have low cost. Again, low cost, I kind of put an asterisk by that. I talked to our coach yesterday, and he said that that system costs $15,000 to start, then $2,500 every year to keep that subscription. So low cost, again, relatively speaking to who you're talking to. So thankfully, I have that at my disposal for this study. So my first question is, can the cheaper, more accessible version, SRPE, is it comparable to distance covered, which is a little bit more widely accepted measure of training load in specifically a male intercollegiate soccer setting? And the second one, kind of where I alluded to earlier, was if injuries are preventable, how do we prevent them? And the easy answer is don't work with people too hard. Makes sense. But they found that actually chronic high training loads can be beneficial to the participant or the athlete, because as many of you in here have been in athletics or still are in athletics, you understand that the fitter people, again, just kind of anecdotally, tend not to get injured very much, especially those nagging chronic non-contact mechanisms. So that's where the load spikes may be something that is more indicative of potential injury. And I mentioned the people that are more fit compared to those that aren't. Well, a more fit person is going to be able to tolerate higher load, so therefore the spike might not be a spike to everybody. So that's where the acute chronic workload ratio comes into play. And it's meant to kind of normalize the loads in its inter-person. So it takes the chronic load, and again, you can measure this with heart rate measures, you can measure distance, you can measure SRPE, whatever you want. It's that week of load divided by the average of the latest 4 weeks load. So that would include the current week plus the last 3. And there are other ways you can do that. They have uncoupled, where you take out that current week. They have 3 weeks, they have 6 weeks. There's a lot of different variability. I'm doing current load over the average of the latest 4 weeks load for my study. And so that's developed from Bannister, which was one of the seminal articles in this world of training load quantification. And it's kind of stood the test of time a little bit with some modifications from some more contemporary authors. And my next question is, can workload indicate potential injury in a intercollegiate male soccer population? So that kind of goes to my purpose, to find a practical and cost-effective strategy for many, many people to utilize these methods. This is out there. there are people that make a lot of money doing this for professional teams, for big time college teams. I'm trying to be a little more of help the little guy, and that's where that's where my questions start to come into play. Evaluate a potential relationship between session of RPE, something that's a little more accessible for everybody, compared to something that's not quite as accessible, the distance covered in the activity. And going on to second, evaluate a potential relationship between the SRPE, session RPE, and injury occurrence in both in a male intercollegiate soccer population. So the study for the first aim, it's going to be very similar to the second, but I'm collecting RPE measures from a team of approximately 30 participants over the course of the 2019 Fall NCAA Championship Soccer season. To find the SRPE, I'm going to take the minutes of activity and find those measures for every practice. The minutes will come from primarily the Polar Pro or Polar Team Pro devices that measure the team minutes, or a backup is the countable athletic related activities forms that coaches need to fill out for compliance reasons. And they have to have X amount of time per week. So that's my backup if the Polar Team Pros don't register the time. And the RPE measures will be done electronically. I have a web-based system where they can do them from mobile phones or anywhere they have access to the internet. Most kids are on their phones about 5 minutes after practice is over, texting their fun buddies anyway. So I try to be as convenient as I can. And the distance cover and SRPE will be looked at overall, but then I will also break down between the different team-related athletic activities, which are the practices, matches, strength training sessions, and the small group or individual workouts. And the small group individual workouts don't happen quite so often in the in-season, and neither do weights. But the reason I'm kind of breaking those out a little bit is because they found weights is one of the situations where the distance covered doesn't really jive with the intensity, because you don't have to move very far in weight training, and you can still get a really good workout. So that's why I'm kind of trying to separate those a little bit and see if there's any discrepancies among those little groups. And the second aim is to determine the potential injury incidence using SRPE, which the RP is collected, SRPE is found with the minutes, and then examining the injury records retrospectively to determine if there are any preventable injuries that occur at specific times. Injury is going to be defined in this study as anything that is reported to the medical staff, the athletic training students, physical therapy, or team physician. Time loss, while it will be noted, will not be a qualifier, because there's a lot of studies that say 50 to 75% of injuries are what they call transient, and that don't really require any time loss. And if I miss 50 to 75% of my injuries, I might be missing quite a few. So I want to make sure that those cut points are going to be based on the acute chronic workload ratio, the median, and the upper quartile. And then my aims or my outcomes, SRPE, will be related to distance covered. The second one, SRPE, will be related to injury incidence. And future directions apply this to a greater sport population. Dr. Rick.
So the teams wear the heart rate monitors basically all the time.
Yes. That's...
So distance covered, I think, is a logical place to start. But if you don't find a relationship between SRPE and distance covered, you have a whole plethora of other metrics that we could dive into. Is that sort of a backup plan if distance covered isn't related to SRPE?
Yeah, that's definitely something I can definitely try. We're going to have heart rate measures, and the Polar Team Pro has a lot of, I guess, inherent or factory settings that I might have to kind of look at and tweak a little bit, or just kind of do a lot of math on my own. But there's definitely a lot in that Polar Team Pro, and the coach has given me password access, everything to have free reign with the data. Dr. Carter.
ACWR.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly how that works in the answering your name.
Okay. Why I use that, and this will be applicable to injuries that happen after 4 weeks. You need 4 weeks to collect that. If someone has, I'm making up numbers to make the math easy for me. Someone has a 300 load in 1 week. Player A. Player B has a 400 load next week. 400 load that same week. So they're different loads, but neither are injured. Player A next week has 400 load. Player B next week has 600 load. I should say the average of, but what I'm trying to is try to normalize load, because 500 load for one person is not going to be the same for the other because of the fitness involved with everybody. And that's where the ACWR comes into play with trying to give a measure that will represent, in a way, fitness over time. And is it the best way that we have right now? Probably. There are lots of other theories that say that there might be anything better, but at this time in the literature, that's the measure that tells us what that load was relative to what they've been doing previously, which should represent fitness more. Does that help?
Yeah, a little bit. So that normalizes training load.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with physical nutrition.
You can use the SRP as a measure. You can insert that. ACWR is really just an equation. Is really all it is. But you can put any load measure into that equation.
What all are you doing?
For the second aim, which is where ACWR is represented, it's SRP. I'll be happy to show you the spreadsheet that I have in my pilot work this afternoon.
I guess this is a logistical question, Troy, but you say the duration of the championship season, so does that mean starting like day one of training camp? So I guess I'm thinking, we all know that training camp, high volume, high load, lots of injuries that occur during that training camp. How do you kind of account for that versus what their load would be during a regular type of?
And just kind of doing, I did some very, very, very bad pilot work in the last fall. I didn't have very much participation, but where it comes in is if they come in fit, that load tends not to be that great. But yes, they have 2-a-days, and you'll also start to see when the matches start, those practice sessions start to decrease, but the load that you find in those matches is a lot greater than any practice that they'll have. Especially those guys that played 90 or more. I think they had 7 overtime matches this past fall. So they had lots of guys that played 110 minutes. So you'll find that even though the number of practices is different, the load starts to kind of normalize. And there's going to be a little bit higher load initially. But then that also kind of plays into the fitness over time. If they have that load initially and they were able to tolerate it, that should, in theory, help the coaches to prevent injuries later on because the benefits of chronic load, high chronic load. Yes.
Are they accustomed to using the Polar Pro already? The players are used to using that?
All it takes for them is to strap it on their chest.
Okay.
The data is then recouped when the devices are put back in, and the coaches then sync everything, and it pops out.
That's something they've been using.
They've been using it for I think 3 years right now.
What about the SRPE?
I had some pilot work done, some official pilot work done in the spring for 7 weeks. And my biggest concern going into this was participation.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers were approximately 89% response rate over that 7-week period. If I took one player out of that, it was 91.
That's awesome. So you're using that
measure, or that your tech people helped you develop
Yeah,
something to gather that?
Students, actually. And
Yeah.
it's just a web-based version of the RPE scale. It's a drop-down menu, what's your name, what activity did you just get done with, and then the question is, how was practice? Or how was the session?
It's right there.
They tap buttons and submit.
Okay. And the pilot stuff you did it with the team you're gonna be working with?
Yes.
So they've had practice?
Yes,
Yeah.
except for those that are going to be new,
Yeah.
which is probably about 7 or 8. Yes, sir.
So you briefly alluded to this, but I think it's a real selling point of the direction it's on, that this work has been done extensively, but where the money is, professional soccer, professional athletics, et cetera. So they don't know what their athletes are. So and a lot of that is black box because they have their sport analytics people, but there is some work. You can go to the MIT Sport Analytics Conference and see what some of that work is being done. So I think using that as a selling point as you're moving forward, here's the stuff that's been done. This has kind of been figured out in the big money arena, but most of us aren't in that arena. We're down here, like you said, by the little person. They don't have a ton of resources, et cetera, and most people aren't even going to have the heart rate monitors.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is get down to a point that it's accessible. Here's an accessible workload measure that shows validity with the heart rate monitors and some of the other metrics. That's why I brought up the previous metrics too, because maybe heart rate intensity might be a better, or is a better measurement of workload than distance covered. But if you can find the lowest common denominator, I think that's the real value of that. So that's just kind of the talking point moving forward of the value that this project brings.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm right on with distance covered. I've already been
In professional settings, yes, there's definitely some possible ways, nothing set in stone, but yes. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you don't get data, so you had a backup plan. So that was if you don't get time or something like that?
If I don't, if for some reason the polar pros do not register the length of time.
If they don't register length of time, then you're getting no data from them, correct?
Correct.
So then you don't get distance, you don't get heart rate metrics. Are you talking about one individual one goes out, or are you saying the team does not re-up their contract and you no longer have access?
They'll re-up in their contract, so it's, I've gotten insurance. Yeah. And so that'd be essentially a null and void day,
Okay.
or a null and void session more than a day. The coach has invested too much money in it already, and it's actually a big selling point for the coach because all the big time schools do it, so it looks good for his recruiting.
Does the coach use it pretty much? Do they monitor?
They try, but they've had this. That's where they kind of actually like me around because I can try to put some sense to the numbers. And I've had a relationship with this coach for a long time since even when I first started as an assistant athletic trainer many moons ago. He was still on staff, so he knows we have a pretty good working relationship, and he's excited that someone can finally interpret the numbers better than what he can. Yes.
What do the students say about it this spring? Do they have any opinion about how to fill in the?
I actually got some feedback from the fall to figure out how I want to proceed in the spring, and some people were good about it, and the team captains tended to be, oh, this is something that they do in the bigs, and that's something that's kind of cool that we get access to. Others were, the coaches didn't really care about it, so I stopped caring about it. And that was addressed with the coaches, and that's, again, going to be a little bit more of an issue going forward. That's why I have the coach's letter of support on my dissertation proposal. So, because he's a very, very, very important, I can't punish and I can't I don't have that much influence over the players. The head coach and the assistants do. But they're invested in this and they want this to work because they think it's, again, a recruiting tool to show that this is what we do that's similar to what you'd see in the Premiership and all the other teams that you'll see overseas and even into the MLS now.
I mentioned this when I think we had our discussions. Are the coaches going to be blinded to what the players have perceived their workout to be? for that section to be?
I still haven't decided that yet. And what I could do, and I've talked to someone I think he's in the first year now. He works for the Carolina Hurricanes. He says they give a generalized report, so it doesn't really single anyone out, which I think is valuable to the coaches still to know where they kind of lie. So that might be a little bit more of an aim where they're getting information. It's just going to be this is what the team thought, and so they can't say, oh, Johnny thinks he's doing this, but he was slacking today. He's lying. So, and that just kind of ruins the perception of why they are going to fill these RPs to begin with.
So if the coaches aren't using that data already on accuracy, I would suggest continuing to keep it that way, even at the group level, because you don't want the coach even subconsciously changing their practices based on the data, either the perceived athlete data or even the heart rate data. You want the system to kind of flow naturally like it would, capture that data before. You can give them a report afterwards, of course, but it's a much cleaner study design, so it's not a feedback loop, even a subconscious one of, okay, everyone rated this session really high, I got to dial it back. And now you're getting kind of a different trajectory than you would have if you just let it go. So if possible, I would try to keep all that information until the very end and give a report to the coaches on how that looked at data.
I think that'd be very possible.
If you can.
I think it would be.
I think the players would be more honest too, with their scoring of the perceived assertions. John's right.
Sheldon, so I might be leaving for a couple minutes. If I'm not able to come back in time, can I take out? I think everything will be fine. So just in case that they walk around or they can just the cameras, because Carolyn sent a message. I have to move the chair to our left. They're waiting.
Yeah. Right. So there's,
I see sometimes that. I never said it. I never talked about
Oh, yes, yes.
No, I'm talking about when I'm watching y'all. Was it Oh, that was it, yeah.
My favorite teacher is I turned my music on when I was teaching elementary. That'd be anywhere. I was standing. I used to miss all the time. And I was standing next to the person. It was terrible. Yeah, yeah. So that one was like my favorite teacher. They did ask for my original, I don't like that. No, yeah, I know where your ticket was. I don't know. I was like, oh. You have to provide earphones or ears. I brought my name, so I thought they were validated or if you have to provide your earplugs, they would have to church and probably just turn yours down. It wasn't happening, like, it was either him or a rock throw on. I don't want to have a migraine. We don't have any music is louder now. Unless she was angry because this guy made money taking it all. Oh my God, I love it. Good. And he did it all on his own. So that's what I was feeling. And he did it all.
So I must have passed on. Like, I feel like I was young people who feel like that, like, the word architect, I couldn't like it. But at least for me, there's physiological concepts about me, not so much. And the rest is psychological.
That would be that.
Whereas this is like, you're gonna do that. On the bottom.
Hey, I'm Sean, by the way. Sean. What, your controlling the camera? Is that for records or is that showing your house?
What he's doing is like
For YouTube.
we got 2 cameras on here.
Beautiful. I wish I had more. I wish it was Are you a student in undergrad or?
I'm PhD.
PhD student? Okay. Awesome. What program?
Well, kinesiology, but sport and exercise psychology.
Sport and exercise.
So Dr. Yo's my advisor.
Okay. She's my major. Yeah. Not that one.
No.
Really helpful.
Almost there. You're left?
Yeah. Well, assuming this all.
Yeah. It all works out.
Yeah.
No, you'll be fine. I just finished my first year, so still got a while.
Okay. How's it turn out?
Good, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know where Eddie went?
I do not. He said he had to run for a second, so I'm in charge of both right now.
Okay. I just got angry and took off and this time, yeah, but yeah, eventually.
Yeah. No, we just covered my Saturday. So we're gonna wait 1 second.
Sure.
Go out real quick. This way, when they bring us food, it doesn't claim climb all the family.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Thank you. Shelby, is that focused on stuff again?
I'm gonna start this.
Okay. We're gonna let Sean get it started. You're on.
Raise your hand if you have a member of your immediate family who does not regularly exercise. Okay, keep your hands raised. Look around the room. We are a room full of exercise professionals, and just about every person here has a member of their immediate family who doesn't regularly exercise. My name is Sean Cruz. I am an exercise science faculty member at Bryan University in Tempe, Arizona. My main interest in the kinesiology field is trying to get people to start an exercise program and maintain an exercise program, especially considering, as Randy told us yesterday, only about 23 to 24% of the population actually meets the Department of Health and Human Services physical activity guidelines. The title of my project is The Impact of a Worksite Circuit Training Program for Health, Fitness, and Self-Efficacy in Underactive Adults. And I'll be performing this at my place of employment at Bryan University. Here's the background for my project. Now, as mentioned, about 24%, 1 every 4 people, actually meet the physical activity guidelines. This is based on self-report data. When you look at objective measures using accelerometry, it actually looks more like 10%, about 1 every 10 people who really meet the recommendations. Either way you look at it, most people don't exercise regularly. And we know that exercise improves physical, mental, emotional, and cognitive health. Therefore, we just need to figure out how to actually get people to get on an exercise routine that will actually sustain. When people do start to exercise, roughly half quit within 6 months. And here's why. Self-efficacy is the most consistent psychological predictor of whether a person continues an exercise program or not. People with high self-efficacy generally tend to stick with exercise programs. People with low self-efficacy tend to quit. Now, even when people with high self-efficacy quit, they're much more likely to go back to an exercise program eventually. Lack of time, lack of support, lack of intrinsic motivation. People who typically quit exercise programs are more motivated by extrinsic factors, such as they want to lose weight for a vacation. They want to earn money. They're working out because they feel guilted to. They feel like other people expect them to. And then a lack of convenience, which is obviously kind of a broad umbrella term, but that could be things such as not liking the exercise facility that's closest to you, not being close to a gym, not being in a neighborhood where there's a park nearby or there's sidewalks to walk on. Now, circuit training is a unique type of exercise in that it is a style of exercise that combines both aerobic and resistance training benefits. And it does so using minimal time. There's a study showing that with just 30 minutes of circuit training twice a week, people can improve most risk factors related to heart disease, as well as fitness. Now, in a review of research on why people quit exercise programs, the recommendation was for people who are at risk, and at risk includes sedentary individuals. They should be part of a multi-component program using both exercise as well as psychological approaches, behavioral approaches, in a place that is in their regular environment, such as home or work. Employed Americans spend over half of their waking hours at work. Now, putting all this together and going back to the third bullet point, what if we had an exercise program that required minimal time, that aimed to build self-efficacy, that aimed to build intrinsic motivation, that provided support, and also was convenient because it was located at where people are spending most of their waking hours? That is what I'm going to be doing in this project. I'm going to offer a workout program using circuit training, and I'm intentionally going well below the physical activity guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic exercise, as well as 2 strength training sessions a week. I'm aiming to go well below that, as well as address these other factors in hopes that this will be a program that can build self-efficacy, build intrinsic motivation, while also improving people's health and fitness. Here's the specific purpose of the project. Underactive employees is defined as people who are not meeting the guidelines regularly. I'll be using Bryan University. Like many other universities, most of the employees are sedentary. They sit all day during their jobs. And it features I don't have statistics on how many people don't meet the recommendations, but I do know just anecdotally from being around the university that many people are not regularly involved in exercise. I note that I'm looking to identify the outline. I don't expect that this study is going to produce a perfect blueprint. My hope is I'll gather components for a program that will work, and then after this project, I'm going to work with the university's wellness committee to develop a long-term program that will be able to get employees engaged in regular exercise. Here are the aims. First, to determine if 2 circuit training sessions of roughly 20 to 25 minutes per session can improve health and fitness in underactive adults. I'll be measuring it through these health and fitness measures. SF36, short form 36, is a self-assessment of health, looking at a couple different areas, including physical functioning, mental wellness, and pain. It is shown to be a valid measure of those different categories. Waist to hip ratio, that could be a fitness or health measure. I put it in health because waist to hip ratio is a very effective determinant of whether a person currently has diabetes or heart disease. It is also an effective predictor of whether a person is moving towards heart disease or diabetes. In terms of fitness, I'll be using a Rockport walk test, which is shown to be a valid estimate of a person's VO2 peak. I'll also be using BMI and 10 repetition max for leg press and chest press to look at muscle endurance. My second aim, I'm looking to determine if a time-efficient program with behavioral strategies can improve self-efficacy and intrinsic motivation in underactive adults. And I'll be looking at that through a couple surveys. The BREC2, or the Behavioral Regulation 2 exercise questionnaire, is closely related to the self-determination theory. It's a valid measure of the 3 constructs of the self-determination theory. As a whole, what it looks to do is determine what is the strongest form of motivation. Is it intrinsic motivation? Is it one of the extrinsic forms of motivation to exercise? And my hope is that I'll be using that and we'll be seeing over the course of the trial that intrinsic motivation will increase towards the end. I'll be using a single item intention measure. While this isn't related to my actual aim, considering that a lot of behavioral theories overlap in their constructs, intention is obviously the main focus of the theory of planned behavior. I'll be using just a one question, a valid single item measure is asking people, do they plan to regularly exercise moving forward? And then I'll also be using a 5-item self-efficacy scale, which will be asking people what their level of confidence is that they'll be able to continue exercising when they're on vacation, when they lack time, and when they're in different emotional states. Here is a look at my proposed study in terms of the actual exercise that people will be performing. Specifically, I'm looking to recruit 24 people from Bryan University. It's going to be supervised group exercise, although not in the form of a typical group exercise class. Everyone's going to be training themselves going through the circuit. I will be there monitoring. I'm looking to get roughly 2 to 4 people to go through the circuit at the same time. So one person will start, maybe get to their second exercise, the next person starts, and the next person starts. The same order will be followed for every workout, with a little bit of an exception, which I'll get to soon. There will be 10 exercises, and each exercise will be 1 set. So it'll be performed to momentary muscular fatigue, or MMF. The reason I'm doing this, momentary muscular fatigue, when people are trained to that, and that's the point when people are lifting, and on the concentric phase, they get to the point where no matter how hard they try, that weight does not go another inch. The reason for doing this is that when people train to momentary muscular fatigue, it is shown to enhance the aerobic-based benefits of the exercise. It increases blood flow, it increases the ability of arteries to dilate, and it also increases the amount of mitochondria found in muscle cells. In other words, it is a way to make exercise more effective without actually adding extra exercises. 30 seconds or less of rest between exercises, which is typical for circuit training. Based on previous research using a similar protocol, I estimate this will take about 25 minutes per workout, if not less. Here's a look at the behavioral strategies I'll be using in this. And I'm using a couple different strategies where they'll be overlapping with constructs from 3 different major behavioral theories. I'll explain the program strategies. The constructs are in parentheses. The specific theories, SET, self-efficacy theory, SDT, self-determination theory, TPB, theory of planned behavior. In regards to goal setting, I'm going to ask participants to set 2 goals. One is for the first week, and that's an approach to build mastery, to achieve mastery experience, to build self-efficacy. And it can be something simple like, my goal for the first week is to 10 bulk my sessions. They will also set goals for the overall intervention. We're going to use something called Zoom Instant Messaging, and this will be for those of you who are 30 plus, at least similar to AOL Instant Messaging, when you're talking to a bunch of people and all the participants will be in the same chat. I can tell those of you who are laughing that who's used it before. Zoom Instant Messaging, all the participants will be in the same chat. They'll get the opportunity to support each other, to share milestones. I got to 100 pounds today in the leg press, something like that, to talk about when they're going to be working out. They'll get the opportunity to bond with each other. Group exercise with the instructor, so that provides 2 forms of support, not only me, but also each other, including organic support. Maybe somebody finishes the last exercise and they look back and the next person is on the 7th exercise and they're struggling, so that person can support the other person, cheering them on to get through. They will choose 2 exercises to provide an opportunity for autonomy. So the first 8 exercises are set. And the last 2, they will have the opportunity to choose out of a small selection of 4. And then finally, they will get to select their times. I'll give them a few specific possible times they can go each weekday, and they can choose their own times. I will also survey patient or participants after the study, asking 2 questions. 1, what aspects of the program did you like? And then 2, if you were going to go through the program again, what aspects would you change and why? My hope is that this survey will give me some feedback on components that worked and did not work for the future program I will launch at the university. Here are my expected outcomes. Thank you. Questions?
What size is your school?
It's roughly 150 employees.
And how many students? Just curious.
I think the last one's maybe 1,100 students.
And how long have you been there?
6 years.
Okay. So I'm gearing toward like the relationship that you may already have in place to help support participation. And I'm guessing you have that. Seems to be a common theme with my questions. Yeah. I think that's a key to success. And so just curious about that. It really sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Being that it is a small school, I do have relationships with people in the departments. I know the financial aid team. I know the enrollment advisors. I know the admissions team. And I have relationships with the heads of the departments. So being that it is a small school and having that advantage, kind of like what Alan talked about yesterday, how he knows everyone from being the janitor and the coach and everything else. It is good because I will now have the opportunity to actually meet with each team and to pitch the idea as a whole. Plus, there'll be through the wellness team, an email going out to the whole university. So I will get to individually speak with each department and get to pitch the idea in hopes that I can recruit 24, if not more than that. Yes.
You're looking to find people that don't currently need the recommendation. And
Correct.
you're confident that, well, I think you might get some statistics beginning, that one's specific to your school, but you're confident that there's enough, unfortunately, people not meeting the recommendation?
Yes. I don't have stats on that.
Yeah.
But anecdotally, from being around the university and talking to people, I do believe that there are, not only that there's way more than 24, but that I'll be able to recruit 24 people from that population. That's fair.
You may want to look for people that are in doctoral programs. They will be requirements.
Or family members of doctoral students.
I was wondering, if you accomplish this and you're able to kind of refine your program and build it over time, would this be something you would consider also offering for students? Or is that already in existence or part of the courses? How would you feel about that?
To be honest, I haven't even thought about students. I've been focused on more employees. If let's say this goes well, and then there's the program that we develop at the university, and that goes well. My thought after that was actually to target other local companies in the Phoenix area that have gyms on site.
The reason I ask is, if you have 1,100 students, it seems like it might be kind of close-knit. And I know you teach the courses, but they might be academically oriented, or people that want to be in the fitness profession, are the students getting the activity as well? That's something to think about including. It would be the same program.
The vast majority of our students are synchronous online students. So they're not on campus, which is part of the reason why I haven't considered for students. That's correct.
Did you say you're going to allow them to set the original existence of the strength training?
I'm going to use a percent of, and that I did not list. I'm going to use a percent of the 10 rep maxes. I believe, based on a previous site, it's 50% of the 10 rep max, but then quickly get them up to speed within 2 weeks.
And how many reps will they do?
12 to 15. When they get to 15, increase the weight.
Even if they have any failure, they will increase the weight.
Yeah, yes, correct. I'm aiming for them to reach, it was originally 12 to 15, 10 to 15. But my goal is that they get to momentary muscular fatigue within 10 to 15. If they can do 15 or more, the weight increases, and the weight will continue to increase until they reach fatigue in less than 15 reps. Yes,
Are you
Melissa?
going to be tracking on like a workout card? Will they have their workout card with them? So hopefully after a week or two, they can kind of do it themselves.
My goal is to get them to remember their settings and weights through fear. And if they don't, no, everyone will have a workout card. So every time they come in, they'll receive their workout card with the exercises in order, and they'll know their seat settings, their weights, everything will do this. That's covered.
Are you using the ACSM screening to decide who's appropriate?
The pre-participation screening? Yes. I think that was your suggestion, by the way. That's right.
We talked about having people, few start at a time, so they kind of cycle through, and we want to keep them that come, so if Dr. Gill and I started at 8, and the next day we have to do it at 8, the next day we have to do it at 8, is that what you were saying?
Oh, no, people can choose whatever time. I just mean that people will cycle through the workout, but just if 2 people start at 8, I'll ask one person to wait 2 minutes, and then the first person starts. Once the first person gets to maybe the second exercise, third exercise, then the next person will start the routine. So they're following the same circuit, and they can choose whatever workout time. If somebody wants to work out in the morning one day, then after work another day, that's fine. That's proper.
Aside from the things you're doing, you're attached directly to the construct, intrinsic motivation stuff. Are there other things you can do to make sure they keep coming?
Yes, a few things. One is, so obviously besides what's going on with trying to build their self-advocacy, having support from me, having support from others, there is, in the wellness program, there's this app called Vitality, and Vitality offers points for wellness activities that people do. So people work at the university, when they attend a wellness lecture or they work out, they get points. Ultimately, when they accumulate enough points, they can transfer those points into gift cards in places such as Target and Amazon. People will get points for every workout they complete in hopes of that will keep them going. So if they complete all 24 workouts, they'll earn blank amount of points. I think it's 5 or 10 points per workout. And so they'll earn all those points and they can put that towards. So that's one thing. Also, as we talked about, I will be offering educational resources for people who participate in the study. I'm going to ask them at the start, what are some things in wellness and in nutrition exercise that you'd like to learn about? I'm going to create some educational resources and then periodically share those with participants. So if there's, I will be giving them to that, I'll be sharing that periodically. So as they go along, hopefully they'll want to continue because they want to get the next week's article, as long as they stay in the program.
And the schedule for this, you have to set so they can come when they have free time, right? So
I'll give them some options. So I've been polling the potential participants and asking them when worked best for you before work, when works best after work. So they'll have limited options.
Nothing in minutes, just people going after work.
Yes. That was I will explore noon if it's needed.
They didn't say anything though, right, about noon? You were asking about.
Not yet, no.
Nobody said noon.
No, nobody's requested lunch yet.
What about later, after work, does that mean either 8 o'clock at night or 4 o'clock?
Like 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., somewhere around there. So, no, actually, mostly almost every employee finishes work around 5, 6, or 7. I found basically a 5:30 to 7 p.m. range seems to encapsulate almost all employees.
And you're going to supervise this 5 days a week, those sessions?
Mostly, yes.
Yourself?
Yes. I think I might not do one evening where I teach, but yeah, other than that, if no one signs up, if I say I'll be there from 5:30 to 7 p.m. and no one says they're coming in at 6:30 p.m., I'm just going to take off. Yes, Susan.
So what are your thoughts about promoting this program in light of the variety pack of reasons why someone might choose to participate? Just curious about that because we know just educating people about it is not always maybe its values or maybe. What do you think?
How will I be selling it to employees? Well, one, I mean, there's the whole support thing. There's in a lot of departments like admissions, and our university is really well known for this. That when one person does it, they get the other people on board. So I want to make it like a thing that people do. And so one is support, being interested. 2 is that I think I was a personal trainer for 9 years. One of the biggest reasons was people would work with me was due to accountability. People just needed a time and appointment, and if they make a session and I'm going to be there, and they know that their other person from the department is going to be there, the accountability exists. And then of course essentially they'll get a free personal trainer for 12 weeks. So I'm going to pitch based on that as well.
The value of it. There's no cost to them, correct?
Yeah, none.
Yeah.
That's Carl.
Your definition of employee is pretty near, I see you call them president or chancellor, upper level administrators, as well as other employees, include everyone.
Yeah, I'll take whoever is willing to participate.
For staff members as well,
Mm-hmm.
not just faculty.
Absolutely, yeah. Sure.
Are you going to be on the Zoom?
I will. My thought is being that there'll be 25 or more of us in that chat. And that I've seen this with other things, like we have the wellness company, and they've created monthly and 3-month challenges before, and they put people into Zoom chats, and a lot of times they start it, and then it just goes from there. My thought is once I get it started, every once in a while I'll share something, but I think that it'll be driven mostly by the participants. I will need to run it, but I'll be in there. Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Ready to go yesterday, 8:30.
Just move 7 chairs.
From your lab?
Huh?
From your lab?
No, to the lab. Just new chairs arriving.
Oh, nice,
That's the.
When you put these on, should they be under private? Like, where do you? Because like then only EDD and Kim can see it. Is that how she wants it?
I think everyone can see. You mean our live video or
I'm talking
you?
about this.
This video. I think everyone can see. You can set. It's open to the public.
That's all we have. We thought about
Advanced settings.
Okay, so I'm thinking. Yes.
We did those. We did a hundred day when we talked to kids. We could use those.
Well, actually, a colleague of mine went to the University of Life and did a study where he just had people
You can try to search it. You can try to search it.
Yeah, because like if I click because this is now under my name and it says this video is on my name. So I think it's set on private. For anyone outside of EDD. Or so EDD can see it, but like if see this is under my account.
Oh yeah, I
I can't see it.
But yeah, it was.
I'm gonna ask her which way she wants it. Because she might want it on private for this.
That it's it does more than way more than traditional machine learning. It does better armor evaluation of blood flow.
She's not with qualified. That's why I asked her a question. You don't need the regulation. Yes, you don't qualify. You know, just I don't know. I'm a little bit funny, but I really like just
Sometimes too much.
Yeah, so whatever. My dear, fitness assessment that you have to.
I do. I take a lot of advice meetings that we have. But you said the meeting was reviewer. You're not meeting the recommendation, it's almost like. I'm not stressing this clearly. So literally, one of the biggest notes on things like, I'm going to make sure people know, I am not trying to meet the recommendation. So thank you that and adding some assessments is a big. So that and the assessments, I was like, man, I'm lacking assessment, so, yeah, absolutely.
She makes me feel that. She gets up at 5 and I remember that. And I'm snoring. Where's Christine? And she's up for room. Okay, so where's Christine? Hey, I'm like, so she leaves so quiet.
Keep it private
She
or?
speaks up more like you
Because when I set YouTube live, you can choose open to only the people who click the link or it's open to public. It's safe.
function. What do I need? She wanted to. Our regular department,
Yeah, I'm the same thing. I am, I wake up, I go to the gym, and then it's like the rest of the day, I'm a professor and I'm going. The rest of the day. Spinning class. I heard that.
I'm gonna give you when I can't come there.
I appreciate that. We were sitting there afterwards, relaxing, spinning class. I was like, Christina's hard. She's thorough. She's like a boss. She does everything.
Hey, Eddie. Yeah, Ben. I've already have lunch. Yep. And then we can go over. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm ready to go chairs. Yeah, sure. Seven chairs. Yeah, I think you're ready. What? Yeah, sure. Off of that. First start.
They're walking, they're moving, I can't deal with it, like, I need to be still, and I need to never walk, I'm like, I can't. Okay, love you, yep, you can see me, I cannot. Yes. I did manage. Oh, yeah. I made it all the way to Wisconsin. My time, man. The day before, too.
She said unlisted.
I had telekinesis and I figure out.
She said put it as unlisted. For this. Because that means if you have the link.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, for the YouTube live, I don't know. Yeah, I was excited to have this.
I really appreciate Don't start without me. Okay, Christine's gonna be our last person today, our last person. Everybody will get themselves. Dr. Carver just left and said, don't start without me. Oh, did you say that? Oh. Dr. Carver. But we're on a schedule. You know,
We know you're on schedule.
I'm a rule follower. You'll see my rules. But I do have a laser pointer, so now I have it.
You don't remember using a laser pointer?
I'm using a laser pointer. Can't wait. I don't even have cats, but I'm excited about the laser pointer. Keep talking. Now I'm nervous. Everyone's staring at me. I'm not. Well, just while we're waiting, I also took tap dancing. Now you learn how to cheer.
You have to do that in the music. So.
No, the cats do it for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do.
Remember, Alan, can you get one more lunch? Everybody gets presented today, get a picture taken together.
Do we get to see
Yeah, you're back.
Yes, you will.
I waited.
Like,
You don't understand how torture
is
is.
on your share.
my wife's every piece of
Well, he's back, so I can start. All right. My name is Christine Rocky, and I am a lecturer at Coastal Carolina University and the internship coordinator for the Exercise and Sports Science Department. The title of my proposal is the impact of high-intensity training on middle school students. So what I have here, and those of you who aren't familiar with the FitnessGram, I'll explain to you what this means. FitnessGram is a fitness assessment done in all South Carolina schools, and it is done to anyone who's enrolled in physical education from 3rd grade on. And the assessment is done based on all the 5 components of fitness. They are scored, what did I do? They are scored based on whether they are in a healthy fitness zone, needs improvement, or needs improvement high risk. Okay, so what you'll see here is the gray column. This is why I wanted my laser pointer. The gray column is those students who are both needs improvement and needs improvement high risk added together. This is 5th grade, 8th grade, and high school. So you'll see that the needs improvement becomes the needs improvement high risk by the time they get into 12th grade. So they're getting less and less fit, less and less healthy as time goes on. This is one of the reasons that I'm working with middle school students, because the dramatic increase actually starts from 5th to 8th grade. The other statement I need, this is a lot of words, this is why I wanted the laser pointer for sure. What we're looking at right here is, this is a cohort study, a longitudinal cohort study done by Farouk et al. In 2018, actually it's a very recently published article, and it's about 550 students over those 8 years. And it goes, let me kind of show you how it's divided between boys and girls here, and from 7 to 15 here. So the total physical activity is in counts per minute as done by an accelerometer. Starts at 780 and goes all the way down to 482 for boys, 756 to 400 for girls in those age spans. And then this is, we've all heard this, MVPA, moderate to vigorous physical activity. The decline is remarkable between those age groups as well. So our kids are getting less and less active as time goes on. I'm not looking at this, though I really wanted to, and I just was asked not to. But obesity, it's not yet obesity, but the BMI goes up quite dramatically as well between those age groups. So that's something we're going to have an obese population before too long. So we also have to worry about children being diagnosed with formerly adult-only chronic conditions like hypertension, high cholesterol, hypercholesterolemia, and type 2 diabetes. As early as the pediatrician that I started this whole research thing with was as little as 8 was getting type 2 diabetes. I was possessed. Really, I'm not pressing a button. So I was really excited that Randy and I had the same number for physical activity costs at $117 billion per year. So we're looking at some similar research. People who are active spend
$1,500 per year less on healthcare costs, and that's average, of course. And then South Carolina is going to spend $8.5 billion on healthcare costs due to physical inactivity. So it's a kind of an epidemic going on here. So the purpose of this study is to assess an intervention, a specific high-intensity training protocol on the improvement of fitness gram scores and intrinsic motivation on middle school students. So the first aim is just to improve the physical activity, physical fitness scores based on the fitness gram. And before and after a 8-week intervention, there's going to be a fitness gram assessment. And then aim 2 is to increase the enjoyment, self-efficacy, and confidence to continue physical activity through high-intensity training for Horry County middle school students. The research question is, does the inclusion of a high-intensity training protocol into a traditional physical education class improve the fitness, enjoyment, self-efficacy, and confidence of middle school students compared to those who are not introduced to the protocol? So here's where I was a rule follower. It said detailed methods, so I did all this. And then I said, never mind, here we go. So the methods here, we're gonna, at the beginning of the school year, it happens every year, the students are used to it. By the time they get to middle school, they do the fitness gram assessment. And it's done by every PE teacher, so they all do it in every single class. I'm going to, so I've been blessed, and I didn't write it in my first literature that I did on this project, but I've been blessed with an honors student research assistant who's on a fellowship who actually gets paid to help me. So I have a guinea pig, a sucker, a GA without being a GA, who has her own academic schedule. So on the days and the times that she can go to the middle school, those are going to be the classes that we target for the intervention. On the days and times that she can't go are going to be the classes we don't. So there are 3 PE teachers, there are 5 periods a day that they teach, and so she will hit about half of the classes based on her fall schedule that we've already kind of worked out. And so she's going to do half of that, and I'm going to be there probably 50% of the time, depending on my meetings and all that stuff. But she's been working with high intensity training for a long time, so she's going to be great. Then we're going to conduct a high intensity training intervention to the cohort. What's going to happen is that the students are going to do their traditional PE class. So the PE teacher is going to have, he's either going to be doing instruction. So on the days that he does instruction, there's 3 PE teachers, and they kind of just divide the classes into little cohorts. And so some of them will be doing drills, some of them will be doing one-on-one instruction with the PE teacher, and then a group of them will go to Haley, who's my research assistant, and she'll do the HIIT training. And then when they're finished with their 8 to 10 minutes of HIIT training, they're going to go back to the class and continue the rotation. On days that they're playing games, if it's like toward the end of the unit and they're in gameplay, they're just going to step over when they're not involved in gameplay. So it's we've done pilot work and it's worked out really well, but it just kind of flows with the flow of the class for that particular PE section. I've decided on 2 4-minute Tabata, which is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, repeated 8 times, and she'll do 2 different types of that. So it's 8 minutes of physical activity is all they're really doing with her. The whole rotation time will take about 10 minutes. So we're going to continue this for 8 weeks. They're 9-week quarters. People ask why I didn't do the whole semester. It's because for the last 3 years we've had hurricanes, and I want a backup plan. So I want a backup quarter just in case I get hurricanes. So they'll do the fitness gram at the end of the quarter, and also both groups of students will do what's called the intrinsic motivation inventory, which I'll show you in just a minute, and then I'm going to compare the results of those 2 groups. So why did I choose high intensity training? It's very easy. Obviously, we've been doing it so far, so it's easy to incorporate into traditional physical education classes. Each teacher, like I said, they will allow the physical education teacher to also have a smaller cohort of students because they'll be able to focus on, like let's say they're working on basketball beef, balance, elbow, eye, follow through. Well, they only have 3 or 4 students going through their line rather than 6 or 7. They'll be able to have more individualized instruction with those students in their individual session times. It has been shown to deliver similar or even better health benefits than steady state cardio. And so while it doesn't meet the 60 minutes that kids are supposed to get per day, it does do a lot of the same stuff that Sean was talking about with his circuit training. Stop it! I swear, my fingers are nowhere near the buttons. It is fun, according to research. People say that HIIT training is fun because it goes so quick and you get little rest breaks all the time. So you go really hard, really as hard as you can, and then you rest. And you go really hard and then you rest. So the fun and the variety and the differences are all one of the reasons that kids like it. And it's easy for college students to learn to teach. At first I was going to have multiple college students doing this, but now that I know I have someone and it was going to be volunteers. So now I know I have someone who's paid and who's motivated, and not to mention she's just a stellar, awesome student, so she will be intrinsically motivated to do this because she likes this stuff. So the what and the why of the intrinsic motivation inventory, I kind of want to see if these students are going to continue doing this type of physical activity, because it's great that they're here and they're getting fitter, but are they going to continue to do this type of activity? So on a Likert scale of 1 to 7, they first ask about, this is a standardized inventory, intrinsic motivation inventory, and first they asked about interest and enjoyment, and then they're asked about perceived competence, because that's another thing that keeps people doing exercise, and we've heard that today, that if people feel like they can do it, they're going to be more apt to do it. So that self-efficacy piece. So they find out if they like doing it, and then we find out if they feel capable of doing it compared to other things that they do in their life. The expected outcome is that first we hope to see that students that are involved in a high intensity training are going to have greater improvement on their fitnessgram scores than those who do not. And we also think that those who do the high intensity training will have higher levels of confidence and desire to continue activity than those who did not receive the physical activity in the form of HIIT. One of the reasons for that is the exercises are fairly simple, and they're not shooting a basketball or kicking a soccer goal or anything like that. So most people can do the type of exercises that we are introducing to them. They will be a combination of both muscular strength and cardiovascular. So we might do a HIIT Tabata that is a cycle of a cardiovascular event, like let's say a burpee, with a muscular strength event like a push-up. But they're done as fast as you can, and so you repeat burpee, push-up, burpee, push-up, burpee, push-up, burpee, push-up. And then you rest for a minute and a half, and then you go to your next Tabata. So that is the way it is. So here's the references, lots of them. And oops, too far. There we go. All right. Questions for me?
Are you doing this with all three? All three things, 6, 7, 8.
Yes. And actually, the schedules haven't been made for school yet, so I'm not 100% sure it's going to be 6, 7, and 8. But it was, and based on her schedule, it still will be. But if the school changes their schedule, which I heard that they're thinking about doing, then it might not be 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so yes.
Are you sure that research said that people think burpees are fun?
I didn't say burpees. I said high intensity training. But hey, if you know that you're going to be over in 20 seconds, you can do it. It's like a labor contraction. Ben.
Oh my, good work.
Thank you.
Interesting. Middle school growth is an interesting one. And often the quality is not what it should be. As Michael pointed out, at the high school students in physical education programs across the board, probably, but there's gross generalization. So, what's the quality like of the current physical education program that these kids are involved in?
It was great. We actually did a tour with this school. When I originally started, I had a pediatrician who was kind of the spearhead behind this idea, and he got his undergrad degree in kinesiology, so he was very interested in the health ramifications of people, especially at this age. So he watched these PE teachers in awe about how they they're pretty darn good. I'm maybe a little bit biased. My kids do go to school there. One of them graduated from there, and the other one is there now. One should be there next year. So, but they really had started incorporating some of this stuff anyway. There's very little downtime in there. They keep their lessons active. The pilot data that I got, students, every student improved in their fitnessgram scores. I mean, maybe not every student, because we actually only got averages in the pilot study. But the data that we just asked for, hey, can we see the PACER test results this quarter? And the results that I got from that was remarkable improvement in all students, not just the HIT students. So they really do a good job. I'm impressed with this PE program.
Okay, great. So I'm just, with the middle school students, they could be possible, because you've got 200 odd students, right?
Right.
Is it possible there might be some that don't like high intensity
Yes.
training?
It's very possible. Like, burpees are not fun. Right, I totally agree with that. I completely understand in this population. And at the day that we were observing, we actually stayed for the end of 6th grade, and then it worked into 8th grade. And the difference in 6th graders and 8th graders was like, wow, what happened to these kids? A little bit more puberty and a little bit less, I want to be in PE. So, and the girls were probably worse. And actually when I first started thinking about doing the study, I was going to focus primarily on females as well. Because they do tend to have that social stigma of not wanting to get sweaty and not wanting to have to do their hair again and all that kind of thing. And I was that girl, ninth grade PE, first period of the day. How awful was that going to be? Now I don't care. But I totally understand that. But that one of the reasons we decided that I would be there as kind of an observer and not the person who actually did the HIT training was because college students are a little bit more hip, they're a little bit more cool, they might tend to relate a little bit better to that college student. She wears her coastal garb. She every day that she goes out there, she has something that says coastal on it. And, the students tend to think that that's cool, that she's someone different. She's not a teacher. They can call her Haley. So I think that helps some. But one of the things that we're going to do is, she's going to use both the talk test and RPE, and she's pretty trained in both of them. And we ask in the middle of workouts, how hard was that one? How hard was that one? And they kind of throw out answers. It's not, they don't write it down or anything. But if she sees a student in a group of 6 to 8 students who's clearly not out of breath, then she's gonna be there. Come on, you can do it. She's gonna be our little cheerleader out there, and she's done a very good job so far with that in the sample groups that we've done. So, yes.
Thanks.
Christine, you mentioned roughly 8 minutes of exercise. How did you settle on that now?
So the research shows that as little as 6 minutes of high intensity training could be beneficial. So I didn't want to disrupt students completely out of their rotation and learning whatever sport or activity they were doing in their traditional classes. But I did want it to still be what research indicated. And there's a lot of research out there saying that 8 minutes is more than enough doing high intensity training. So, yeah. Yes?
With that 8 minutes, how long does it take to see the results?
And some research studies say as little as 2 weeks. So that it runs the gamut. And that's one of the reasons that I decided, at first I was going to say, oh, hey, Haley, do whatever HIT workout you wanted to. And I thought, well, let's make this controlled. Let's do something that we can say, we did 8 minutes of physical activity broken into 2 blocks of 4, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. So we had an actual protocol when we're writing up the paper that may be published one day. So. Are you? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I'm hungry here now.
So on your questionnaire for each item, I know noticed that I'm with Haley, this with Haley. I'm just wondering is that kind of too specific to her? I mean, is she too much of a focal point, or was that more of a kind of wording, comprehension, understanding things for the students at the level?
I think that's mostly what it was. And then the other students with Haley is replaced with just PE. So Now, the students who are in PE with Haley, they don't get to answer whether or not they like just traditional PE. So that's something that I wanted to talk to my committee about. So that is something that I'm not sure, like, should I do 2 surveys with the people that are working with Haley? And so that's one thing that I'm working on. And I think because they know that she's Haley, if I said in high intensity training, I'm afraid they wouldn't know what that is. And I couldn't, but I understand your question totally. And when I was rewording the intrinsic motivation inventory, I was like, how do I get this to them? Yeah. Yes.
Yesterday, Valerie told us at lunch about formatting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us from memory when to use 1 versus 1.5 versus 2 inch margins?
Hey, I know that this side and this side are 1.5. This side and this side are 1. I do know that. And the triple space is not 3 spaces, it's only 2 spaces because in single space, that was totally interesting to me. I was totally blown away by that. I would say 2. Yeah.
What's your plan for dissemination?
Action plan?
Yep.
So my action plan hopefully is to get into professional development for the PE. My permission for this was given to me by the actual district, the person at the district who oversees PE. Mm-hmm. So he's interested in this. He wants to analyze all of the fitnessgram data for the, regardless of what they're doing for the whole county. And he actually wants an intern to help him do that. So he would love it if I could disseminate this to all the PE teachers in the county, not even just the middle school ones. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first action plan, and the dissemination plan is something different, right?
You mentioned something. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned something about maybe it was choosing HIT because it was easy for college students to implement. Is your plan to work this into PETE?
Potentially, and I hadn't even really thought about that. We were really focusing on the exercise science students because that's people I have most contact with. Our PET program and our exercise science program have completely split. We have no, like, very little interaction except that they have to take some classes.
They move them to college then?
Yeah. So, and when we got there, it wasn't like that. It was way more integrated. So, yeah, I would love to. And actually, there are a couple professors over there that are still there from before we split, and I would love to implement it as professional development for them, or even into they teach a lifetime fitness class, like how to teach lifetime fitness, and I would love to incorporate it into that.
So, are you hoping to eventually come up with a professional development program that you could offer to lead for districts other than Horry County?
Yes. And in my action plan was to actually go to SHAPE conference and kind of do a little, here, how about you guys do this in your classroom, kind of education / sample exercise session with PE teachers. Cool. Yes.
Can I sign up?
Yeah. I'll do it for you in a private lesson.
So I know you're going to get information from the students.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about information hearing from the teacher, their voice.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely, I talked to Coach Hawks. He's my main contact there. I talk to him every day because he's in the pickup line. So, hey, how's it going? So informally, I've gotten a lot. But yes, definitely, I could see that as a, how do you like this? The way it's incorporated in the class? Do you feel like it's distracted? Do you feel like the students aren't learning the traditional? Can you compare the traditional PE classes to the classes that do have HIT in terms of skill acquisition and things like that? Are you meeting your SLOs, or are they falling behind because they have this 8-minute breakdown?
When you're observing,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be journaling at that point, or what are you looking for when you're?
I hadn't. I've just gone for it literally just because I hadn't done anything, and so that is something that I'll have to consider and decide what I need to do with that information. And I give Haley feedback. We meet once a week at least, and so I have to give her feedback on what I saw when I was there. But yes.
I mean, if you got those people there, like Haley and the you know well, and see if they pick up later.
Yeah.
Sort of you know, it'd be a good opportunity to ask them, at least informally, but you could set up some questions that would, you know, help inform what you're doing. And that could add to it quite a lot. And then I think you should think carefully about, you know, your time there, because you could allocate some of it to just getting organized and making sure you're dealing with trouble spots, and then you could allocate a chunk of it, maybe half of it, you know, to then writing specific notes. And if you could discipline yourself to do that, you would, you know, that could add a lot to the context of what you're doing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good point.
I think, done? So again, a photo of the group that are presented in just a moment. Because we moved the tables out in the hallway again. You keep moving them out, thinking that they're bring food and it's disruptive to us, but, group photo, you guys already got parking patches and screens. Food will come, and then again at, Mary will come for you guys as a whole, split as far as the group, transportation, our